Hey everybody, a few of you asked, could I do some things in Affinity Photo compared to Photoshop? And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a simple project in Photoshop, and then I'm going to jump right into Affinity Photo and do the exact same project, and we're going to compare the two and how they work. Are we ready for this? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to photography and as a photo artist, thinking creatively out of the box. All right, let's jump into today's program, and that is a few months ago, I was asked if I would take a look at Affinity Photo 2 and offer some tips and techniques using that software. And I never thought about it, but I just said, you know, what the heck, let's do it. And so I bought the software last year. What made me do it is they offered it at 50% off. So I bought it. It was like $37 and some cents or whatever here in America. So I grabbed it, but I really haven't had a chance to dive into it and start looking at how it works. So we're going to take a look at a single project that I'm going to do in Photoshop, and I'm going to take that same project and do it in Affinity Photo, and we can see there's some similarities between the two products, but there are some differences and some things I had to investigate and do some research on to find to see maybe it's not possible to do this. And I found some other, some workarounds and stuff. So let's take a look at Photoshop first, and let's dive into our program. Now, for the ones that have been following me for a while, here I am in Photoshop. You know that if I just actually double click anywhere in my workspace, it gives me the open dialog box. And what I want to do here is use this image right here. Now I'm going to ignore these other images for this reason. I have those already in something called the library section of Photoshop, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And I've had those there for, boy, some of that stuff for like 3, 4, 5 years. But it's not in Affinity Photo. And so I'm going to show you what do I do in Affinity Photo when I get to that program. So again, let me just open up this image. And this is the project we'll start with. Now, just a heads up on this, a disclaimer, this is not 100% my image. I took a class by Jill Johnson, and this is part AI and part Photoshop, and this is what we came up with in that class. And so I'm just going to continue on with this and add my own personal flavor and touch to this. So with that selected, what I want to do is use some assets that I use quite often in projects, and I have it loaded in libraries because that's the whole purpose of libraries. So you can see over here there's a panel on the far right side called Libraries. That should be open by default. If not, it will be under your window drop-down menu here in Photoshop. About halfway down, you will see Libraries right there. And what you can do is create different categories within the libraries to stay organized by just clicking on this folder here on the very bottom. I'm not going to do that because I've done a video in the past about how to load the library and stuff and create these different categories. But you just click on the folder, give it a name, and it creates a category for you. So here when I choose objects, you're going to see this is loaded up with things that I will use in future projects. Well, if I knew that or know that I want to use this, that's all I have to do is click and drag it in, and it will load it into the library. And then I can use this in future projects. So all the items that you see here on the far right side, I have used in the past. So with multiple projects, I have a category called text, and I have something called overlays. So I'm going to go to overlays because a lot of these I will use this, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to choose this right here. And I'm going to click and drag it in and let that drop in. And I'm going to let that fill that space, but I can do Control-T, Command-T on a Mac, and I think, well, it's a little bit too big. I want to resize that or reshape that. Just a matter of just refitting that the way you want it to be. So again, I'm just holding Shift down, and let's fill the whole thing up right there. Okay, and I just enter the keyboard. Okay, now I'm going to choose a blending mode. So this is just a simple project. I'm going to go down here and choose multiply. Now, when I did do that, I don't like this sort of abstract overlay on the eye there. So again, Control T, Command T on a Mac. I'm going to hold that Shift key down, and I'm just going to stretch that out a little bit like that. I just want it off the eye. Okay. And again, personal preference on this. Okay, with that finished, I want to grab, let's see, let's load this right here. This is, I renamed this, called a clipping mask. I've used this quite often. You'll see this in libraries again. And again, I'm just going to click and drag that in here and then reposition it where I want it to be. And let's just hold the Shift key down. We'll stretch that out. And again, enter on the keyboard. So again, after resizing that, I just did Control T, Command T on a Mac, made it an adjustment to make it fit, hit enter on the keyboard. Now what I'd like to do is I need to move these two layers that you see here, layer 1 with the abstract overlay and the background. I want to move it above this right here that says clipping mask. I can't do that because this layer is locked. So I'm going to click on the padlock. So now it unlocks it. I'm going to click on this layer, hold the Shift key down, and click on that layer so they're both selected. I'm going to come over here on the thumbnail, click and drag it above the clipping mask layer. So now the two layers are above this layer right here. Now what I want to do is click on this layer, and if I do a right mouse click, you can come down to the flyout menu and choose Create Clipping Mask right here. Now when I do that, you can see what happens. It indents this and it clipped it to this shape down here. I want to do the same thing with this one above, but I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to use the shortcut keystroke because it saves me time rather than right mouse click. If I hold the Alt key down and don't let go, and that would be Option on a Mac, watch what happens to my cursor that looks like a hand here. As it hovers between the two layers, it changes. Now again, remember, I have the Alt key down. I'm holding that. I'm not letting go. Hover between. It changes. Click with my index finger on the mouse, and it clipped that in there. Now, these square pixels you see here, that means it's a transparent background. I don't want that. I want it, some type of background there. So I'm going to choose in my, again, libraries, this right here. And I'm just going to click and drag that in. Let it fill in there, Control T. And let's see, I'm going to just, let's do this. Let me resize this. I'm going to rotate this like this. And let's make that fit this way. And I'm going to hold the Shift key down again and just stretch that out. Okay, enter on my keyboard to accept that. And then I'm going to click and drag to push that to the bottom of the stack. So now that's my background. I'm going to do Control J with this to duplicate that, and I'm going to do a blending mode. I'm going to go with multiply on that. And if the image is a little bit too dark for me, which it is, I'm going to go to the top of my stack right there, and I'm going to come down here to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk, and I'm going to choose curves. And I'm just going to go to the curves dialog box here, and I'm going to click and drag to move that up a bit, just to lighten that up so you can see it before and after here. Okay, so again, very subjective. So let's say, oh, that's what I like. Now what I want to do is I'm going to come down to, let's zoom in on this. I want to add my signature here. And so I'm going to close out of this category in my libraries called overlays, and I have a category called text. Let me expand that. And I have different signatures I've created. And again, a few weeks ago, I did a video on how to create your own custom signature, how to load it into the library. And I'll put the links in the show notes if you missed that video on how to do that. And I like using this signature right here that I created when I do some like creative artwork, things that have more like a painterly type style look rather than a photographic type look. Because if it's a photograph type look, I typically will use a different signature, which is this one right here, or that one based on the color, the background, that kind of stuff. But anyhow, let me grab this one right here. Ooh, come on there, dude. Okay, so this one right here. And you click and drag, drop that in, and Control T, Command T on a Mac. Move that around, resize that if I want to resize that, and enter on the keyboard. Now that's sort of hard to see right there. So when I created this, I created a bevel emboss on this when I was designing that signature, and I did a cover overlay, or color overlay. So I'm going to double click on that to open up the dialog box. And let me move this over here so we can see this. And I'm going to choose this category here. I'm going to come over here to that as my color. Color picker opens up. And in here, I can change this to any color I want. And you see it changes to white. But what if I wanted to move off that and choose a color like this color right here on the image, or part of the hair? Click on that and you can see how that changes. Or let's go pick this color right here. Okay, so let's say I like that because I don't want this to be pronounced really big on my artwork there. And then click on OK. So very easy to, again, drop in my signature and add my signature to the final artwork right there. Okay, so that's just an elementary project, working in layers, doing a clipping mask, doing some blending modes, and then dropping in a signature. All right, now let me replicate the same project in Affinity Photo, and let's see the similarities and differences between those two programs. Okay, here I am in Affinity Photo, and we're going to take a look at the similarities of this program and differences when you're trying to do a basic project like I just did in Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do is, when this is your standard interface, I'm going to come over here where it says layers, this entire panel. I'm going to move over here, and I'm just going to click down and drag out so the layers section is floating over here so we can have access to that. So I can stretch it out so we can see more of it, just like I do in Photoshop. Okay, so similar to Photoshop, if I double click on my workspace, this gives me the open dialog box. Yay, that works, right? Really cool. And then just grab the image I'm going to work on and then open it up in Photoshop. Well, what I want to do now is, I was curious, these are things I have loaded. I showed you these items. I have it in Photoshop, the category called libraries. And I can use these assets in the future on any project. It makes it just handy to have that stuff available to me. Well, can I do that in this program? So let me cancel out of this. So my first reaction was, well, let me see if we have something called libraries. So under Window drop-down menu, come down about halfway. Hey, we got libraries. Awesome. Now, I was like, how do I load stuff in there? I couldn't figure it out. I was opening things up, clicking and dragging it in there, wouldn't accept it. I'm holding shortcut keystrokes like Alt or Option on a Mac, click and drag in there, and nothing. Nothing was working. Then I discovered this is for custom scripts and actions. And I know nothing about that kind of stuff in this program at all, let alone scripts. It's like a programming language. So that's not the same as Photoshop. And that's what was misleading. So back to Windows, I'm going to turn off libraries. So I discovered they have a category under Windows called Assets. And when I chose that, yay, I can load things in there. Now, the way you load things in there is different, and I'll share that with you in a minute. But just to save time, I loaded in my signature, and I put in that clipping mask that I used in the Photoshop project. Well, I need to load up a couple other things there. So here's how you do it. I'm going to double click on my workspace. I need to load this. I'm going to hold the Control key down. This should be Command on a Mac. And I'm going to click on that because I need to multi-select those two. Click on Open, and it opens up in Affinity Photo. Now, first thing I'm thinking is, all right, let's grab this right there. Let's click and drag it into the Asset folder. And nothing is happening. And I was frustrating. And again, I'm holding down Shift and drag and Alt and drag and all these different shortcuts. No, nothing was working. Then I found out with that open up, if I go over here, there's a little pop-up menu. And there's a feature there called Add from Selection. Bam! There we go. It loaded it in there. So now I don't need that anymore. I could close out. So I'm going to close out of that. And now we have this one. Same thing. I'm going to go over here to the pop-up menu, choose Add from Selection, and it loads it in there. and then I can close that out. Now, this is permanently in this program. So when I work on future projects, these assets are available to me. As a footnote to this, just like in libraries in Adobe Photoshop, if I go to this flyout menu, if I click on that icon, you can create a new category. That's what I did. I called it My Stuff. You can see that right here, My Stuff. But you can create your own different categories and load things in there. You could rename it, you could duplicate it, you could delete them, whatever. But you'll see the drop-down menu will show all your categories. Under default, I have nothing there. I created a category called My Stuff, and that's where I have those 4 items loaded. So that's always going to be available to me. So yes, we can do that concept in this program. It's just the language is different and the way you load it in there is different. Okay, so now let's start with the project. I'm going to try to replicate what I did in Photoshop. So again, I'm going to double click anywhere on my workspace, find that image again, click on Open. And you'll see in Layers, there is the background layer right there. And so now what I want to do, I'm trying to remember what I did in Adobe Photoshop. I think I grabbed that right there. So that's all I have to do is click and drag it in and then reposition that. If I need to resize that, I don't. Now, I have it in mind in Photoshop, enter on the keyboard to accept that. Well, if I do that, I get this pop-up, and I don't even know what that's for. So, because I haven't had time to dive into that, just click anywhere in your workspace. I'm just going to click on the side there, and it accepted that. Now, I know I did a blending mode, so I'm going to select that layer to activate it, go to the drop-down menu, because they have all the blending modes like we do in Photoshop, and I chose multiply, if I remember right. Now, this one, okay, so this is not covering the eye, so great. I don't have to readjust that, but again, you could go in there and click and drag to move it, stretch it out, whatever you want to do, but perfect, landed perfect right there. Okay, the next thing I did was, if I remember right, I grabbed the item that I used to clip into to create that clipping mask. So I'm going to click and drag that, again, this icon, and drag it into there. Reposition that, resize it if it needs to be resized, and luckily for me, it fits in there. So again, I'm just going to click on the side there to accept that. Now what I need to do is I need this layer selected. I'm going to click and drag and push it to the very bottom right here. And now what I want to do is I need to clip these 2 layers, this one and this one, to this at the very bottom. Okay. The problem is there's no such animal is called create a clipping mask anywhere in there. And I was just befuddled. It's like, I know it's got to be possible. How in the heck you do it? And then I found out, here we go. Ready for this? I'm going to choose that layer right there. So it's selected. I'm going to hold the Shift key down to click on that one. So those 2 are selected. I'm going to go to an area called Arrange, and I'm going to choose something called Move Inside. How in the heck, I figured that one out. I was just trial and error, but I found it out. Move inside. Click on that, and there we go. It clipped. So they don't use the language clipping mask. It would have been easy for me if it said clipping mask, same as Photoshop, but it didn't do that. So again, just a footnote, it's under Arrange, and you're choosing Move Inside. Okay. So what does it mean by move inside? Well, if I come over here in Layers and expand that, you can see these 2 are like tucked inside. So it's clipped, but they call it inside, moved inside. Okay. So now that that's done, I need the background. And what I did was I used this texture right here. So again, I'm just going to click and drag this in and then reposition it, resize if I need to. Nope, don't need to. So I'm going to click on that. And then this is at the very top. I don't need that at the top. I'm going to click and drag that to the bottom. So there's my background, just like I did in Photoshop. So that's pretty cool. Now, if I select that layer again, Control J, Command J on a Mac, that's what I do in Photoshop. Will that work here? So Control J, Command J on a Mac. Yep. Yay. So some of these shortcut techniques will work in Affinity Photo. And what did I do? Blending mode, I think it was multiply. Yep, multiply. Okay, so there we go. So there's my stack. And just like I did last time, I think I added a little bit of lightning. So I did curves. So here, the Oreo cookie dipped in milk icon, very similar to Photoshop. There is something called curves in there. There it is, curves. And I'm going to click and drag here to move that up a little bit. And again, just to lighten that. So if I close out of that, you can see the on-off is right here to toggle for visibility. Where Photoshop, it's on this side. This is over here on the far right side. So, similar, but just a different location. So far, so good. Now it's signature time. So let's move in here and let's add a signature. All right, so I have my signature here, and I'm just going to, again, click and drag to drop that in. And again, I can resize this and make any kind of adjustment. I'll just use my down arrow keys. Same thing as Photoshop, okay? But let's say, again, and then just click on the side to accept that, not enter. And with that added here, there's the layer. You see something called FX, very similar to Photoshop. So if I click on that, it opens up this dialog box, and there's a category called Color Overlay. Again, very similar to Photoshop. And this is the color. So if I want to change that, I click on this. You get the color wheel. Excuse me. And I can click and drag, and you can see how it changes the color. So if I want that to be white or something else. But here's what puzzled me. If I want to sample the color off this image here, here's the eyedropper. Click on it. Well, that didn't work. Click on it. How about the circle there? Click on it. I'll change it to red. I don't want that. I want a different color. Well, the way you do that, which took a while to learn, you click down on this and don't let go of the mouse. Click and drag to your image, highlight a color like, I'll say this color right here, let go. It puts it here. Now you click on that and it adds that color to your signature. Click on close, close that out. And there we go. So let me pull this out. So there we go. The same project. Now, this is, again, very elementary in terms of a project. I was able to replicate what I did in Photoshop. But again, techniques are a little bit different in some areas. Language is different. The way you do things are different. And that's the challenge. I know a lot of people say, I don't want to change to Affinity Photo because I'm so used to Photoshop, been using it for years, and without thinking, I'm doing shortcut techniques. I know where things are located. And I can get done with my project a lot faster. I get it. If you don't want to use Adobe Photoshop, you're somehow fed up with them, and you're doing basic stuff, I think this program is incredible. You can do some high-end creative things in here, but it's going to be a learning curve, right? It's different languages being used, different techniques. And I love this program so far. I want to dive in deeper with this program. But the thing that bothers me about it is 2 of my plugins do not work. You can't install it. Now, one of them is Boris Effects Optics. And I know that the company is looking at supporting this product, so you can load it in. But the other one that I use, which is Easy Green Screen, which I've talked about in the past, that's specific to Photoshop. And the developer on that has zero interest in ever creating it for this product. That could be changed, right? He could change his mind, but I know that Adobe Photoshop dominates worldwide in terms of a program professionally versus Affinity Photo is not as big, but it is growing. So who knows what's going to happen? We'll see if that ever happens. But I think it's a great program. I promise I will investigate this program further in the future. Again, if you have learned anything, if you can do me a favor, and that is please like the video, subscribe if you have not subscribed, hit the notification bell. That way, next time I upload a video, you get notified on that. Also, thank you for the ones that have been supporting the channel by going to buymecoffee.com/Stephen Photo Artist. The information will be in the show notes. This is not a sponsored video. It's not a big enough channel to be sponsored. And I'm a little bit leery about sponsorships because some of them are pretty like, you got to make sure everything's totally positive and you can't say anything negative about a whatever it is, a piece of hardware, a piece of software, whatever it is I'm looking at. So, but anyhow, thank you for the ones that have been supporting the channel. I really, really appreciate it. All right, so hopefully you learned something. Let's get that camera out. Let's think creatively out of the box. Until next time, see ya.